You all to be seated, please. We can get started. Oh, I do like the obedient crowd. Some of them are awfully wild. My name is Mary Morgan, and I'll be your mistress of ceremonies for this evening. And once again, we are here to celebrate the people who have come through this hallway, perhaps not this one, but the other hallways in this school, and have gone on to bring the name Ottawa High School to the city, to the state, and to the world. And that's wonderful. And each year is an exciting year. And the years like this year, when two of the honorees are people that I have taught with, mean a great deal to me. It's an honor. This is how you learn, by being with these kinds of people. And of course, I was very privileged to have worked with the late Rich Roberts in guidance department and taught 2 floors above Lyle Guenther, who was a fabulous math teacher as well as coach, and was hired by Mr. Kingman. Who put that in there? Matt Winchester. Mr. Kingman had retired long before I came. Okay, Mr. Winchester. But we certainly are very pleased and proud of all of you who are being inducted tonight. And so, I'd like to tell you how the evening is going to go. We're going to stay here and have our banquet, and the actual ceremony will take place in the auditorium. So that after our dinner is finished, I'll ask you to gather your things, beach umbrellas, sandboxes. I mean, usually it's boots, gloves, mittens. Look at this weather, it's wonderful. So gather your things so you don't forget anything down here, and we'll move along to the auditorium. But at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the second Vice President of the Ottawa Township High School Foundation, Mr. Sam Maselli, who has a few words for you. Mr. Maselli.
Good evening, and on behalf of the Ottawa Township High School District 140 Educational Foundation, I'd like to welcome you to the 6th Annual Hall of Fame Inductees Banquet. Before I discuss the Educational Foundation, I'd like to recognize those foundation members who are in attendance this evening. If you'd please stand and be recognized. Linda Evanson, Dr. Kim Novak-Rinker, and Natalie Schmidt. We have a round of applause. I'd also like to recognize those members who could not attend. Our President, Jim Carlson, the first Vice President, Dave Kissenfigger, and members Kane Fairbaugh, John Fisher, and Shannon Stevens. Finally, I'd like to recognize the liaisons between the Ottawa Township High School Board of Education, Board Member Don Harris. Will you please stand up? And Ottawa Superintendent Matt Winchester. I thank all the foundation members and the liaisons for the work they do for the Ottawa Township High School Foundation. The Ottawa Township High School District 140 Educational Foundation was established in 1993. The foundation was established to secure and channel private funds to support and promote educational programs and activities of its students. It's a 501c3 nonprofit private foundation and is an entity independent, separate, and apart from the school. Through the fortunate and generous donations of those supporting the foundation, we've been able to provide grant funding to purchase new equipment, promote innovative teaching initiatives, and augment scholastic resources beyond the fiscal constraints of the school's normal operation. The foundation has provided approximately $200,000 in grants and other support to date. In addition to ensuring the students are exposed to the most relevant technology and educational resources, the foundation is responsible for the Hall of Fame, the Student and Teacher of the Month program, which encourages and acknowledges accomplishments, and most importantly, the Courtyard Project outside the Kingman Gymnasium. The Courtyard Project was developed by the foundation as a funding mechanism through the sale of bricks, benches, statues, lights, and general contributions. Additionally, it is an aesthetic and cultural enhancement to the school property that provides exposure to the arts. And while the courtyard has value unto itself, it is primarily a focal point and funding mechanism to facilitate the more expansive objectives of the foundation. Our hope is that as we are supported with additional contributions, the foundation will expand its financial reach and we'll be able to make an ever-increasing impact on the Ottawa Township High School and the students of the district. One might ask why a public entity such as the Ottawa Township High School would be needful of this assistance. The fact is that Illinois ranks relatively low among states in direct funding of its schools. Yet the majority of the more than 2 million students that currently attend Illinois public schools will stay to live and work in Illinois throughout their adult lives. The economic vitality, future growth, and development, and quality of life that we all share will be impacted by this reality. We believe that assisting in the pursuit of educational excellence not only enriches the lives of our students, but our communities and collective future as well. The Hall of Fame was established by the foundation to inspire and acknowledge excellence and achievement, be it academic, in the arts, athletics, or other distinguished achievements. In highlighting the accomplishments of these inductees, we believe that current students will be inspired by the standard of excellence and accomplishment achieved by their predecessors, and we will better foster a culture of excellence and achievement. We're very pleased that tonight, our 2012 group of inductees continue to establish a high standard of accomplishment for those to follow. We congratulate you on your induction and accomplishments, and we thank you for the examples that you have set. We are proud of what you have meant to the Ottawa Township High School and look forward to your induction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaselli. You know, we sometimes take for granted things like our beautiful art collection and the courtyard that Sam spoke about. But we had a visiting artist this summer, an actor from New York City, who did a summer production here. And when we came to rehearse at the high school, he stopped and looked out into the courtyard and he said, "I want to go out there. May I?" And I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And he was amazed at the design, at the materials, at the sculptures. And he said, "Who did this?" And I said, "Well, our foundation was instrumental." He said, "Amazing. In a small Midwestern town, gentlemen from the East Coast, to find such beautiful artwork, such tremendous sculpture." So you see, that even has traveled around the United States. So there's so much to be proud of, and I know we all are at Ottawa High School. At this time, I'd like to ask Rich Myers to give our invocation. Rich?
Good evening. Please bow your heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity you have given us this evening to honor the recipients of these outstanding awards. We are grateful for the talents and the gifts you have bestowed upon these individuals and for their desire and determination to use these gifts in such a positive way. We give thanks for their family members and for the educators who help to influence their lives with encouragement and guidance. We are grateful for the food we are about to receive and for the chance to celebrate this evening together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We're going to start with This department has been in 16 IMPA contests and then placed first in 15. Okay, I think I see them ready. Under the direction of the Sarah Reckmeyer, our brass quintet, they perform Lassus Trombone by Henry Gilmore. Performing tonight are band members Mary Sheridan, Brian Rogers, Luke Parker, Jake Holm, and Jake Killerley. We'll turn it over to the OHS Jazz Choir, who's going to give you their rendition of Pep.
When you hear the rooters yelling rock, 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 when you hear the chorus singing Ottawa, forth come our heroes facing their foes. When you see the team go crashing on, rushing on to victory. Raise your voices loud and let it play for Ottawa. Crimson and white we're marching onward. Courage and strength be unto you. To Ottawa may we ever be true in the light. precepts true. When you see your sons and daughters striving on, rising unto great renown, then you'll know that we men ever loyal, Ottawa. Crimson and white from marching onward, courage and strength be owed to you. To Ottawa may we ever be true in the life we may pursue. Each boy and girl ever loyal, each loyal heart beating true. In meeting, defeating each task before us, your cheers will high for you. OTHS, AWA, Ottawa, Ottawa, Ottawa.
Thank you so much. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our superintendent, Mr. Matt Winchester.
Thank you very much, Mary. It's always a pleasure having Mary Morgan as our MC. Could we please give her another round of applause? Good evening to Hall of Fame honorees, family members, and friends. Before we begin the induction ceremony, there are a number of people who put a large amount of time getting together tonight's dinner and induction ceremony. Please hold your applause until I get through my thank yous. I would like to thank the Decade nominating and selection committee members for their hard work during the selection process. Thank you to those involved with the organization and decorating necessary to present tonight's ceremony. Shelley Wheatland, Lori Gage, John Levy, Kevin Anderson, and the custodial crew. A huge thank you to Don Harris and Susan McDonald as they worked countless hours organizing and preparing for this event. Thank you to our band and choir students for performing, and directors Sarah Reckmeyer and Roger Am. Thank you to Nick Schwartz, who is taping this evening's ceremony, and OTHS senior student Asia Williams, who designed and created the PowerPoint presentation that you saw on the monitors throughout the cafeteria this evening. Another thank you goes to John Heddle and the staff from the Cheese Shop for the excellent dinner. A final thank you goes to the OTHS Educational Foundation under the direction of Jim Carlson, Foundation President, and Sam for speaking this evening. The dinner and induction ceremonies would not be possible without the OTHS Educational Foundation and their support. Please give a round of applause for all of the above. During this 134th year of Ottawa Township High School, I again welcome all of you to the 6th annual induction ceremony. The Hall of Fame induction provides a unique opportunity to honor those selected. The focus of the Hall of Fame is to recognize excellence and achievement while a high school student, after leaving Ottawa High, or a combination of both. Honorees may or may not have attended Ottawa High School, but were significant and accomplished contributors to OTHS. Also considered for recognition are Ottawa High School teams or groups, as the team we have here this evening. I am honored to have the opportunity to recognize an outstanding inductee group consisting of 6 individuals and 1 team. Each inductee and team was selected by way of a 3-tiered selection process, and all are very worthy of the honor. The inductees were chosen because of their achievements and accomplishments in many different areas: music writing, performance and recording, public speaking, teaching, coaching, writing and publishing, education, fundraising, athletic performance, business, and public service. They have all affected the lives of many with their accomplishments. The diversity of their achievements is noted in your program. This same text is found on the induction plaques, which will be added to our Hall of Fame wall on the 400 floor, which is near the area where we serve tonight's dinner. The central plaque on the 400 wall describes the Hall of Fame, and each year we make it a point to read a specific passage from the plaque. In bold is the statement, "From ordinary beginnings, many through determination, commitment, effort, and high expectations have accomplished the extraordinary. I would like to personally thank all of the inductees for their contributions to Ottawa Township High School. You make us all proud to be Ottawa High School Pirates. Thank you. Tonight's ceremony is about each of you, so it's time for my favorite part of the program, and that's hearing what you have to say. I'd like to take a moment to introduce each inductee, present them or their representative with an award, and ask that they say a few words. So without further ado, our first inductee is Keith Clark, represented by his son, Casey Clark.
It's a privilege to represent my father tonight, and it's a special honor to be joined by his granddaughter, my daughter, Ashley Elizabeth Clark. My parents are unable to come tonight, but they wanted me to express these words. It's been 50 years since our family moved to California, but not a day passes without a mention of Ottawa. Thoughts of our friends, of the many sporting events, wonderful opportunity to raise 4 sons in such a beautiful and supportive community. Tennis matches with Hall of Famers Tom Henderson, Lyle Guenther, and B.J. Moose, with whom I wrote hundreds of songs, and a folk opera. And the chance to teach and coach a generation of fine young people. We've lived in California for half a century, but Ottawa will always be in our hearts. Harriet and I send our love and best wishes to our friends, faculty colleagues, and former students of Ottawa Township High School, and our thanks for this great honor. My dad had a lot of interests and activities while we were all growing up here in Ottawa. He was teaching and coaching, serving as the director of recreation director for the city of Ottawa, starting the swimming program at Black Hawk Beach, where I and a whole lot of you learned to swim. He helped start a lot of tennis activities, musical activities in the summer, and even a summer-wide marble tournament on all of the grade school playgrounds, with shooting those cat's eye marbles that were made not far from here. And if you have any, put them on eBay, because they are worth a fortune now. For me, I've gone on to devote my life to music. So for me, the most memorable parts of my dad's activities revolved around his music. And his music is a very interesting story. He was someone who had never had a music lesson, never had a singing lesson. He was an athlete. Athletes weren't bothered with something like that. He went off to Middlebury College to get a master's degree in English while he was teaching here, when he was just starting here. He probably needed a master's degree to get a raise. And while he was there, he met and became friends with the poet Robert Frost, which must have been a thrill for somebody in his 20s. And I'm sure he asked Robert Frost, "How can I become a famous writer like you?" And Robert Frost gave him great advice. He said, "Go back to where you come from. You live in a very historic part of the country." Of course, he could have said that to anyone, because we all live in a historic part of the country. You live in a wonderful place with lots of history. Go study where you come from. Study your history and write about it. And don't write poems to be published in some book. Write songs and sing your poems like the old bards, like the old Greek poets. Well, my dad had never had a singing lesson, and he didn't know how to play the guitar. So Robert Frost said, well, my friend here will teach you how to play the guitar. So my dad learned to play the guitar, came back to Ottawa, and for the rest of my upbringing here, every weekend we would get into the old station wagon and drive around to communities to learn about LaSalle County. We would go out to farms with a tape recorder that I think he borrowed from Ottawa High School, officially or unofficially, and recorded the singing of old country people and farmers, people who aren't here anymore, but their songs live on in some of those recordings. He would take us kids, as he was doing this research, to fascinating places. In Troy Grove was where Wild Bill Hickok was born, and his nephew, Horace Hickok, lived there. We went, my dad interviewed him, we got to see all of his stuff. I was in about 3rd grade. Horace Hickok said to me, do you want to hold Wild Bill's gun? That's an unforgettable experience. But the one that touches me the most was when we went to Cherry, Illinois, just down the road from here, to learn about the greatest mining disaster in the history of the United States, in 1909, the Cherry Mine disaster. And we wandered around. I can remember seeing that big slag pilings from the old mine. My dad interviewed widows and children of the victims of that mining disaster. He went home and wrote a song about it. Went home and wrote a song about Wild Bill Hickok. He seemed to be writing songs about everything. I don't know, maybe there's even a song about Lyle Guenther, I don't know. He got invited to go to New York and record his songs about LaSalle County for Folkways Records. He'd never been in a big city before. He got on the train, went back to New York. That must have been a thrill. Made a recording. That recording is now in the Smithsonian. And the songs on that recording have been played and sung by many people. He became friends with other folk musicians, primarily his closest friend, Pete Seeger, who would come and stay in our house, and Dad would bring him over to give school assemblies, or come and sing for my dad's English class, or give concerts in our barn out on Gentleman Road that my dad had turned into a theater for plays and for folk music concerts. But the song that is always with me is this song about the Cherry Mine disaster. Written by someone who had never had a music lesson, sung by someone who had never had a singing lesson, played by someone who had never had a guitar lesson, who had been given good advice to look around you and see what a wonderful and interesting world we have and the history that's in your community. Here's that song. Here's that recording.
In 1909, there was an explosion in the St. Paul mine in Cherry, Illinois, where the people were few. The number of deaths totaled 262. 'Twas a cold November day with a hint of rain when a fire broke out in the number 2 vein. A carload of hay caught and started to scorch, and soon the coal mine was a devil's torch. For it held Polish, Lithuanian coal miners from the St. Paul mine. German, Slavic, and Austrian wore lamps on their caps that will never more shine. Ike Lewis, Stewart, Clark John Bundy, Norberg Flood, and Dominic Semendi entered the shaft in a rescue cage, lost their lives in the flaming rage. Some lines were found scribbled deep in slate that told the story of the many men's fate. We're all here together in one large camp, dying slowly from effects of black damp. They were Italian, Polish, Lithuanian, coal miners from the St. Paul mine. German, Slavic, and Austrian wore lamps on their caps that will never more shine. Now they found Henry Crow and his son Alfred near the main shaft, but both were dead. Father's arms around his boy's face, protecting his son with his last embrace. Some maidens from across the sea had not heard of the tragedy, had come to Cherry for their wedding day, only to find where their loved ones lay. They were Italian, Polish, Lithuanian, coal miners from the St. Paul mine. German, Slavic, and Austrian wore lamps on their caps that will never more shine. 200 widows were left by the fire, 1,000 orphans by the mine's great ire. But the worst of all was the woman who cried, because 4 sons and her husband had died. 'Twas a cold Thanksgiving in 1909 for those who lived near the St. Paul mine in Cherry, Illinois, where the people were few, where the number of deaths totaled 262. Italian, Polish, Lithuanian, coal miners from the St. Paul mine. German, Slavic, and Austrian wore lamps on their caps that will never more shine.
Coal miners from the St. Paul mine wore lamps on their caps that will never more shine. While my dad's lamp is not shining quite as brightly, and although it's getting dim, his spirit and outlook on life, he's never lost or forgotten those words that were taught to all of us by another of tonight's inductees, Coach Bill Novak, when he told us all, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, get going, root hard or die, go Ottawa.
Thank you very much. Our second inductee is Cheryle Gartley, OTHS class of 1965.
Isaac does it better, doesn't he? Susan is going to stay with me in case she has to take over, but I wanted to give it a little college try. Thank you ever so much for this wonderful honor, folks, and also for having the opportunity to address you this evening. It was suggested that I share with you the memories from OTHS and something about my career. At first high school in the 60s and a career running a not-for-profit to help people with incontinence, which is the medical term for loss of bladder and bowel control, seemed totally unrelated. But as I struggled with what to say to you all tonight, I realized that so much of what I learned here served me well throughout my career. I loved this town in my 18 years here. That being said, I also was dying to see the world. Growing up, I spent countless hours on Boyce Memorial, plunked on that memorial in the cemetery, would you believe? Watching the barges go by and wishing that someday I too, like the men who worked the river, could see the world. Never in a million years could I have imagined that it would be my misbehaving bladder that got me the opportunity to travel the world, to keynote in places like Japan, Australia, New Zealand, most of Europe, and throughout North America. The route from high school to this career was very circuitous. While working on my MBA at the University of Chicago, I had a sudden onset of urinary tract infections and concomitant incontinence, which would change the course of my life forever. Instead of continuing in banking, as planned, this turn of events led me to founding something called the Simon Foundation for Continence. Named after my grandfather Simon, who some of you might remember, he and my father ran Bloomberg's men's clothing store just a few doors down from Bell at 220 West Main for over 60 years, actually. Grandfather escaped from communism, crawling under barbed wire, being fired at, to the freedom of America, which he adored. He spoke 7 languages fluently, and yet seemed to know only one response to this teenager who constantly complained. And whenever I expressed a complaint about this country, his response began, "But young lady, in this country, everything can be changed." And in honor of that philosophy, we call our organization the Simon Foundation. My career actually began in the dark ages of incontinence. You couldn't go into a drugstore and find products on the market. You couldn't turn on the television set and see a clever ad for overactive bladder drugs. In fact, there were threats on my life because I spoke on television and radio about the bladder and the bowel. Yet the Lancet, the European equivalent of our New England Journal of Medicine, estimates that over 30 million Americans and 200 million people worldwide are affected by this stigma, by the symptom and the consequent stigma. To alleviate that stigma so that people will treat this symptom like the healthcare problem it is and seek treatment has been my life's work. What I learned and experienced right here has served me well throughout my career. For example, the years that I spent struggling in Fräulein Feil's class to learn German. It took me my entire freshman year with a lot of ish and ich before I was finally able to hear and say ich, which is the correct pronunciation of I in German. You can imagine with such a talent for languages what the next 3 years was like. But 20 years later in Düsseldorf, that struggle actually paid off. I took the stage in Düsseldorf prepared to present my speech entirely in German. You can imagine my surprise to find a simultaneous translator sat right here where my wheelchair is, and you can imagine his even greater surprise when I opened my mouth and reasonable German flowed out. Halfway through, I switched to English because the poor guy was so bored. And to this day, the people who were with me will still not answer my question as to whether the spontaneous ovation was in recognition of my efforts to try to speak German or in jubilation that I had stopped and given the task to the man who sat beside me. Here, under Mr. McKeever and Dan, I learned that the show must go on. First with little things, and then with a pretty big thing. Like, for instance, taking the football field with the band just as the bottom half of my clarinet dropped off. And I had to step over it and stay in formation, no matter what my gut was saying, is to pick it up and to save it from disaster. And later on in the band, when I had spent perhaps forever practicing clarinet candy to be chosen as one of the people that would be soloing at the New York World's Fair. And just as we took the stage and began, the overhead airplanes who were doing their wonderful show swooped in, and literally you couldn't hear the person next to you playing, let alone the band behind you. Matt kept directing, we kept playing, and when the air show was over, by gum, we were all still together. And that time, I didn't know what the applause were for. A bunch of kids that stuck together and showed some grace under pressure. That lesson in The Show Must Go On served me very well at very odd times in my career. For instance, if you've not had the nerve-wracking opportunity of doing a live newscast, you might not know that when the commercial comes on, which is what you all are seeing in the audience, what we are experiencing is a technician kind of grabs you by the throat, rushes you onto the stage, tosses you into the chair, mics you, and jacks up your chair so that you aren't like Queen Elizabeth, if you'll recall, when she was just a talking hat over the microphone. And then they literally rush off the stage as the countdown hits live. So I was fairly new to this experience when, just as we went live and I was asked the first question of the interview, I could feel my chair slowly starting to sink. And you can't imagine how strong your arms have to be to lean on the table to try to keep your body up, looking graceful, while your chair is sinking out from under you. Fortunately, one of the technicians saw what was going on, crawled across the stage, got onto his back, pushed at the bottom of my chair, and slowly the chair started to rise. I don't think without my years of band training that I could have held it together the first time, second time I was doing live television. And getting my senior life-saving badge under Mr. Huber here was a process that taught me just how much, if you let your nerves get a hold of you, what the damage can do. To finish the program, we each had to dive to the bottom of the pool and separate two people who were pretending to drown. Now, the technique we were taught seemed pretty straightforward. You put your 2 feet on one person's shoulder, and you reach around for the other person, and you grab them kind of under the neck, and you pull with your arm, and you push with your feet. And in theory, they break apart, and you can rescue hopefully both of them in time. That's the way it should be done. The way not to perform and pass senior life-saving is to do that maneuver on the same person when you are pushing on their shoulders and pulling on their neck. And the way to be sure you absolutely do not pass is if that person was Mr. Huber himself. Many a time when I felt during my career that my nerves were winning before performance somewhere in the world, I would remember that incident. I'm sure there are interviewers who were about to go live that thought what a strange character they had, that as the producer was going 3, 2, 1, and pointing, their interviewee was bursting into laughter at her own joke. It's very effective transferring your nerves to the interviewer, who wonders how in the world they're going to get through with such an odd guest. I hope, as you can see, that I've had a great time looking back, and this was a great opportunity to connect the dots to the present. In closing, I'd like to say to any of the students here tonight, absorb every atom you can from this experience. Yeah, do your homework. but it's the experiences, the friendships, the people who came back tonight because I was going to be here, and the life lessons that I learned from Mr. Huber, from Ms. Spile, from Mr. McKeever, and many, many more great teachers that have come with me for the rest of my life. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to the Foundation for this honor. As our nation struggles with how to fund so many things, including education, may your commitment to add to the experiences like I've just described for those who are currently walking your halls and will in the future is just outstanding. May your passion and your success help to make experiences that will last a lifetime for all those who pass through your doors. Thank you.
Our third inductee this evening is Lyle Guenther. I feel very honored to be included in such a good group of people that have accomplished so much in their lives. I am very proud to be one of them now. I grew up in Peru, Illinois, and forgive me, but I was an LP Cavalier. I played basketball in Kingman gym against Gil Love's basketball teams, and I ran on the old cinder track out here against Keith Clark's track teams. I became an Apache when I went to LaSalle Peru Oglesby Junior College, and I competed in all of the athletic teams that they offered. I then went to Illinois State, became a Redbird, and I played basketball and tennis there. My first year out from college, I taught at Hayworth, Illinois, while Alice finished her music degree at Illinois Wesleyan. That summer, I went to my first day of work out here at the Highway Department, and Jim Harris was there. I said, hey, they need a math teacher at Ottawa High School. Why don't you apply? I had a long interview with Mr. Shannon, and as I was ready to leave, he asked, what do you think you could coach? And I said, well, I think I could coach basketball and tennis. He said, well, that's good. You will coach wrestling and track. So in 1959, I became an Ottawa Pirate and have enjoyed it ever since. I taught for 35 years. I assisted Art Adams in wrestling for several years. I assisted Jim Harris and Dean Riley in basketball. And I assisted Tom Henderson for many years in tennis. A few years after they installed girls tennis here at Ottawa High School, I became the head girls tennis coach. I learned a lot about coaching girls that year. They even cry sometimes when they win. But it was very fun, and I enjoyed it all. And then I did coach the boys varsity tennis teams for a few years. Then in 1993, I retired from teaching and coaching, and Alice and I did a lot of traveling for the next 11 years. And then I saw where the high school needed a girls first-off coach in tennis, and I was ready to get back into it. So I coached for 4 years on the first-off, and then I was able to help Steve Johnson on the varsity as a volunteer, and I helped Matt Gross in the spring as a volunteer, and that's what I'm still doing. I think if I had the opportunity to live my life again, I would probably do it pretty much the same way, except I hope better. hope that I have been a positive influence on at least a few people here in Ottawa. I want to thank Alice, my wife of over 53 years, for putting up with my late suppers, early Saturday morning departures, and of course for raising our 4 wonderful kids. I want to thank Art and Jim and Dean and Tom for teaching me how to coach, and to Steve and Matt for sharing their teams with me. I want to thank the faculty and staff and the students at Ottawa High School that I was able to work with. They made the jobs here so much fun. And of course, I'd like to thank the Board of Education and the Foundation for making this whole program possible. Thanks. Our next inductee this evening is Charles Kingman, represented by his grandson, Alan Gates.
I want to thank the foundation, the administration of the school board, you and the community, everyone who has made this a very special visit for me. I have never visited Ottawa, Illinois. I'm here. My sister has traveled here from Alabama, 2 cousins from Oregon, and we've come together here and had just a wonderful time, and for that alone I would like to thank you. But I'd like to share just a little bit of a thought about that. When we came, we were graciously shown around the school, an extraordinary facility, the artwork, the physical plant, the wonderful buildings, the tennis courts, met amazing faculty members, and thought about this evening and the physical location. And it seemed to me that something I had remembered Mother telling me, that the school was where 2 rivers came together. And she said because it's low-lying land, it was publicly available, and that's why the school was located there. But as I think about it, I think really there's also a metaphor where these rivers meet, where things come together. This is much more than a physical plant. It's much more than an art collection. It's much more than nice tennis courts. It's much more than an extraordinary faculty. It is an entire community coming together. This is where things come together. And I hope you understand what it is, how special this is. I come for my first trip ever to Ottawa and have been constantly surprised with how you express your pride and your aspirations and your faith in your community all together here in this school, and it shows everywhere throughout the community. I hope you are as proud of this as I am as a visitor getting to see it, and I thank you very much.
Our next inductee is Richard Roberts, represented by his wife, Linda Roberts.
Okay. I just want to say Rich was the head of the special needs department, and all of us need a little extra help. I wasn't up here on the stage. I was his first project. My family too. We were wandering the halls looking at the art, and we lost track of time, so I'm very sorry. Rich loved Ottawa High. The picture up there is Rich when he was last here in 2003. He came here in 1976 to get the job. In 1976, he shaved off that beard. You didn't have facial hair in those days. He was interviewed by Gordon Fiddler, who was the superintendent then, and he did get the job. About 2 months after he started the job, Mr. Fiddler stopped him one day in the hall and asked who he was and what he was doing in the building every day. He grew the beard back. He always had a beard. So if you knew Rich wore a beard, he was a big guy. Maybe some people would think he was scary, but if you knew him, he was, some people describe him as a big teddy bear. He loved Ottawa High, and when he came here in 1976, special education services were kind of in their infancy. I think it's safe to say Rich probably created most of the programs that are here for kids today, and I think he deserves this, and of course I'm prejudiced, but I think he deserves this because he helped make Ottawa High School a school for all the young people in the district. He was a good man, and once he created all kinds of programs, the alternative program that was a new thing in those days, a night school for kids who couldn't get here during the day. Pretty much he had most things covered. And then if kids didn't want to come to school, he would drag them here. If kids were problems, he would fight with the administration in his own way. It wasn't really a fight, but Rich would convince you that we needed to keep kids here anyway. He wanted everyone to have an education. So, on behalf of Rich and his family, he has a brother and sister here tonight, and my family who came, and myself, I would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for giving him this honor. He loved Ottawa High, and I think he would be pleased that the feeling was mutual. Thank you.
Our next inductee is Silas Strawn, who's from the OTHS class of 1885, and I will read some information in regards to his acceptance. The Induction Banquet Program highlights many of the numerous accomplishments of 1885 OTHS graduate Silas Strawn, as he helped to develop and lead what is today one of the most esteemed and respected international law firms, Winston & Strawn, LLP, which was more recently led by former Illinois Governor James Thompson. As I acknowledge his induction tonight, I would like to share some additional insights and observations from a book published detailing the firm's history and accomplishments. The book notes that his background in early development infused in him strong educational and professional values. It noted further that while he could take a careful, close-in approach to the details of managing a firm and the intricacies of managing a case, his vision and aspirations for both himself and the firm were considerably broader, encompassing Chicago, the nation, and the world. He served as president of the Chicago Bar Association in 1913 and 14, president of the Illinois State Bar Association in 1921-2, and then as president of the American Bar Association in 1927. He was also involved in business as well, serving briefly as president of Montgomery Ward and on the board of directors of Montgomery Ward and the First National Bank of Chicago, among others. He was also very active in both the U.S. and the International Chamber of Commerce, serving as president of the U.S. Chamber and vice president of the International Chamber, serving as their delegate to Rome, Stockholm, Amsterdam, Washington, D.C., and Vienna. He enjoyed a friendship with U.S. President Calvin Coolidge and was asked by the president to be government counsel in what latter became known as the Teapot Dome scandal. He traveled to China in 1925 with the United States ambassador, along with several international bodies formed to help rescue the country from turmoil and to develop a system and rules of law. He later chaired fundraising efforts in both Illinois and nationally in both 1928 and 1932 for his friend Herbert Hoover. One of his partners described Silas Strawn as a man of the highest integrity in whom all who knew him had complete confidence. He was eminently fair in his judgments, and partners and associates alike accepted without question his decisions on all matters relating to the conduct of the firm's affairs. We are proud tonight to be able to recognize this OTHS graduate that built upon the foundation that he developed in this community to become a national and international influence, Silas Strawn. inductees this evening are the 1957-58 football team, represented by one of the co-captains, Dick Martin, and also Dick Ewing, who will speak on behalf of the team.
When we call your name, you want to come up and we'll hand this all to you. Gene Hampton.
Dick Leslie.
Ron Chalmers.
Chuck Stevens.
Roger DeTore.
Art Mason.
Ernie Peterson.
Fran Clements.
Walter Arley.
Brian Painter.
Bob Parkins. Frank Slusher.
Bill Schiffbauer. Is someone from Bill's family here?
Dick Willie. Representing Coach Novak is Dr. Holly Novak.
Representing Coach Dean Riley is Peg Riley is Jim Harris.
And representing June Gross is Mrs. Gross. Well, thank you. I'd like to say a few words, and I'm not just exactly sure how I was going to say this, and I thought, well, you know, this was success that we had. And then I was thinking back, I do a daily devotional, and Oswald Chamber defines success as, success isn't the end product, success is the journey.
And so what I'd like to do is maybe recap a little bit of our journey that ended up is what some people may say success. But the success are the steps that it took along the way. First of all, we had to be very fortunate, the fact that we lived in a time, in the years, when we really respected our coaches, and we had a community and a high school that was led by Matt Ray Shannon. And he really made sure that excellence was done, it was accomplished here at Ottawa High School. When I went on to college and in dental school and other places, when I talked to my friends and I said, you know, when I was a senior, I was in a senior class play. Everybody up here who took English class was in a senior class play. We had that exposure. We had the exposure of intramurals. We had the exposure of military. We had the band was, was one of the best. It was the teachers, everybody. We were talking to some of the people on our team today and yesterday is how the individual coaches and teachers, how they really influence their lives. And I can look back to the teachers like Charlie Alaconis, and I'm not going to name any other names, but it's really important. And the coaches, let me just tell you on the success. Here we are, we're lined up out in the football field. They're going to play the national anthem. We're all standing there at attention because we knew we had to stand at attention because Coach Novak was behind us. But in the stands, there was a ruckus going on, and next thing we know, we turned around. Here was Coach Novak going up in the stand, getting this kid who was misbehaving, just acting kind of wild during the national anthem, taking this guy, escorting him out of the stadium. Now, that we learned to respect, and we learned not only to respect of each other, but we also respect our community and our country. And it was modeled by the coaches that we have. And during that had a big influence on us. Now, to kind of recap a little bit of our team, we started, first of all, I don't want to get too involved because if you want to read what the Daily Republican Times, is that the right thing? What they had to say about our team, they really did a good job talking about what went on. But that is true, how things work together. We won our first game just barely because one offensive guard from LaSalle pulled, and the defensive tackle, the defensive center did not fill in, and our guard was able to go there, attack the quarterback, and so they didn't tie our game. So we were going good. Another story that was interesting, the next game was at Streeter. So we were at Streeter, we're going to play. Well, one of our halfbacks couldn't put on his jersey. What was wrong? Because it kind of shrunk. So what we were doing, we had this other person on our team that had the biggest heart of anybody, but he just didn't have the genes to give him the size that was needed. But he did have the right size at that time in order to learn to give his jersey to one of our halfbacks. So the whole first half, I'll have to use the name, it kept saying Clemens did this, Clemens did that. He said Hampton did this, Hampton did that. It wasn't Hampton that was doing it, and so Gene Hampton became the star of Grand Ridge thanks to people Clemens. Okay, so we're going along and we won 2 games. The next thing that happened is that we're going to Dixon. Now, Dixon, we were doing okay, we were winning. We went up to Dixon and things were not, we did not have a good game against Dixon. And I remember the quarterback going back to pass. He passed the ball off to the flat and it was intercepted. Off he goes for this touchdown. Well, everybody in the team takes off after this guy to try to keep him from getting a touchdown. Because if he got a touchdown, they were either going to win or they were going to tie us. Fortunately, not from the skill, not from all the athleticism that we had on our team, is because this guy's pants were too big for him. Okay, he was running and he was trying to pull up his pants as he's running. And by the time he got to the 5-yard line, his pants fell down, okay? But that gave us the opportunity to go there and tackle him, okay? Then we were able to hold them and keeping them from scoring a touchdown. So now we're moving along. We had another game, and then it was the DeKalb game. DeKalb had this great quarterback. in Ottawa, we had a really good, we had a good defense, and we had a good running offense. But our passing attack wasn't very good. But we didn't really need it. But anyway, so in comes Evans from DeKalb. So he's throwing the ball. He passed the ball 17 times that game. Okay, I think we passed 2 or 3. I can't remember. But 17 times. Out of 17 times, he completed 5. Okay, for the total of 35 yards. So that tells you something about our defense. Our defense was very strong because we worked together. Everybody on the team had confidence that the person next to him or the person behind him was going to do their job. We all did our job. Just because our backfield intercepted 2 of Evans's passes that time, we can give credit to the backfield, but really we have to give credit to the linemen because they harassed Evans the whole game. He just did not have a good game at all. So what I'm trying to say is that we worked hard, we were coachable, we respected our coaches, we respected our teachers, and what happened was is that we had, as some would say, a successful season. And things really worked well. When we got through, we had some honors and things like that, but I remember that we got a little football. And it's a little football like this, and it has an O on it. That was really cherished. And so my mom wanted it, and so this is kind of a trophy that we had. And I was thinking back in Indiana, you know, if I'm going to say something, what would I say? And I just can't help but thinking about trophies. Now we have these memories and we have trophies, and you know how important they are, and really. How it really gives us a good feeling of what we did while we were here. And then a thought that came to me when I was going to a Methodist church in town, and some of the people on our football team were going to the same church. In fact, one of our players' dad was a Sunday school teacher, and in the Sunday school they had asked us to sing a song. You know, who wants it? Not for us to sing, but what's your favorite song? And so, because I had an older brother, and I always looked up to my older brother, you know, he'd always say the old rugged cross. And I really got to like that song too, the old rugged cross. Well, the chorus of the old rugged cross goes like this. It says, till the trophies at last I lay down, I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. And to me, that was touching. And so as far as our team, we are very humble, and we are very thankful and honored that we had the opportunity to represent Ottawa High School and to be elected to be honored in the Hall of Fame. Did we deserve it? I think we had to give something that some other people, other teams in the future had a chance to look up to, and we want to thank you for including us.
I usually talk to a different venue, a Lutheran pastor, so you never want to give a pastor the pulpit. I've been thinking about what I wanted to say. I want to give you the recipe for success. You take some ordinary young men and you put them on an athletic field, and then you just run them till they want to throw up. And then the coach gathers you up and he says, now we'll begin. After you're in shape, you get to run another quarter around the track. But once you get gathered together, you add Dick Martin. And then you add a Bevo Clements and a Ron Shomas. then you add a John Wrench and a Ralph Lindemann. But of course you need Gene Hampson because he's got the blocking dummy. And he's the guy that will hit you over the head after your block is over. And then coach gives you 10 plays. Was it 10, Dick, or was it 12? You don't know. I think it was 10. He gives you 10 plays and you do them over and over and over and over again until you get it right. And then you go play. Meanwhile, learning good sportsmanship, respect, honor for your teammates first, and then for your coaches, and then for the opposing team. And you learn honesty. And you don't steal anybody's dirty shirt from the locker room, because it will return to smell you up. But in that process, you build character. And what happened with our team was that we were an ordinary bunch of young men. And we won. And how we did it, I don't know. But we won. And we kept on winning. And we were a good team. But I guess what I really want to say tonight is that we have an organization, a high school coaching staff that was just excellent. We had men on that field that were devoted to us. I want to thank these men for what they've become, for what they've accomplished, and how they've blessed this community, their families and friends. And I want to give the glory to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'll ask you to stand as we honor you.
Gentlemen, it's my pleasure to ask you to give one more round of applause for the 2012 Ottawa High School Hall of Fame inductees. And gentlemen of the team, if you would step up to the table on your way out, there is a team picture for each of you, or certainly for a representative for you. So please don't forget that. And I would like to thank all of you for attending this evening's Hall of Fame ceremony. On behalf of the Ottawa Township Educational Foundation, thank you. And we hope to see you in many more future induction ceremonies. Thank you and good night.